Have you ever loved someone who didn't need to say much? Someone whose actions spoke louder than any words ever could? This is a story about a woman who fell in love with a quiet man named Daniel. He didn't talk much, but his body said more than 1,000 words. Through gentle touches, protective gestures, and silent understanding, she learned what real love looked like. But when something terrible happened, everything changed. He walked away, leaving her heartbroken and confused. She didn't understand why the person who once protected her now couldn't even look at her. This is a story about love and fear, about heartbreak and hope, and about finding the courage to fight for the person your heart can't forget. Welcome to His Body Said More. I met him on a Tuesday afternoon in September. The coffee shop was crowded, and I was looking for a place to sit. He looked up from his book and pointed to the empty chair across from him. He didn't say anything, he just nodded and went back to reading. That's how it started. His name was Daniel. I learned that 3 days later, when the barista called out his order, he came to the coffee shop every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 o'clock. He always sat in the same corner. He always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a blueberry muffin, and he hardly ever talked. At first, I thought he just didn't like me. Maybe I was bothering him by sitting at his table. But then I noticed small things. When I walked in, his eyes would find me right away. He would push the chair out a little with his foot so I could sit down easier. If I seemed tired, he would slide his extra napkins toward me without a word. Once, when I sneezed, he handed me his clean napkin before I could even reach for a tissue. He never said much, but his body said more. I started to watch him when he wasn't looking. The way he held his coffee cup with both hands, like he was keeping something precious. The way he smiled just a little when I talked about my day, even though he stayed quiet. The way he leaned forward when I spoke, like every word mattered to him. One rainy Thursday, I forgot my umbrella. I stood at the door of the coffee shop, looking at the heavy rain outside. I didn't want to walk home in that weather. Daniel came up behind me. I could feel him there before I even turned around. He held out his umbrella to me. "Take it," he said softly. His voice was deeper than I expected. "But you'll get wet." I said. He shook his head. "I don't mind." Then he did something that made my heart stop. He reached out and gently moved a piece of wet hair away from my face. His fingers were warm. His eyes were even warmer. I took the umbrella. My hand touched his for just a second. He stepped back quickly, like he was afraid he had done something wrong. But I saw his face turn a little red. I saw the way he couldn't quite look at me after that. The next week I brought his umbrella back. I also brought him a chocolate muffin instead of his usual blueberry one. I wanted to surprise him. When I set it down in front of him, he stared at it for a long moment. Then he looked up at me, and his whole face changed. He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches your eyes and makes everything feel brighter. "You remembered," he whispered. "Remembered what?" I asked. "I told you once, months ago, I said I liked chocolate. You were talking about your favorite dessert. I mentioned it just once. You remembered." I hadn't even realized I remembered, but I had, and the fact that it mattered to him made something warm spread through my chest. After that, things changed between us. He still didn't talk much, but he didn't need to. When I had a bad day, he would wait for me outside the coffee shop and walk me home. He never asked what was wrong. He just stayed close. His presence was enough. When I laughed at something on my phone, he would lean over to see what it was. Then he would smile too, even if he didn't think it was funny. He just liked seeing me happy. When I was cold, he would take off his jacket and put it around my shoulders before I could say anything. It always smelled like coffee and something clean, like fresh air. I started to fall for him without even realizing it. It wasn't because of big romantic gestures or sweet words. It was the small things, the way he saved my favorite seat, the way he bought an extra muffin on days when I looked hungry, the way he stood between me and the crowd when the coffee shop got too busy, the way his hand would brush against mine when we walked, like he wanted to hold it but wasn't sure if he should. One evening we were walking through the park near the coffee shop. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. We sat on a bench together. Neither of us said anything for a long time. Then I felt his hand cover mine, slowly, carefully, like he was asking permission. I turned my hand over and held his back. "I'm not good with words," he said quietly. His voice shook a little. "I never have been, but I need you to know something." I looked at him. His eyes were so full of feeling that I almost couldn't breathe. "When I'm near you, everything feels right," he continued. "I don't know how to say it better than that, but when you smile, I want to protect that smile. When you're sad, I feel it too. When you're not here, nothing feels the same." My eyes filled with tears. "Happy tears. You don't have to say much," I whispered. "I already know." He reached up and touched my face, wiping away a tear with his thumb. Then he leaned his forehead against mine. We stayed like that as the sun went down. Two people who didn't need 1,000 words. Just this moment. Just each other. Because sometimes love isn't about what you say, it's about what you do. How you show up. And the way your heart speaks through every little action when words aren't enough. It happened on a Friday night in October. Daniel and I were walking home from the movies. The streets were quiet. The air smelled like autumn leaves and rain. We were holding hands, something we'd started doing more often now. His hand was warm around mine, and I felt safe. We were talking about the movie when I heard footsteps behind us. Fast footsteps. Before I could turn around, someone grabbed my purse and yanked hard. I stumbled backward. Everything happened so quickly that I barely had time to understand what was going on. But Daniel understood immediately. He let go of my hand and moved faster than I'd ever seen him move. He stepped in front of me, blocking the person who was trying to run away with my bag. I heard shouting. I saw Daniel reach for my purse. Then I heard a terrible sound, something hitting something hard. Daniel fell to the ground. "Daniel!" I screamed. The person with my purse ran away. I didn't care about the purse anymore. I dropped to my knees beside Daniel. He was lying on the sidewalk, not moving. There was blood on the side of his head. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull out my phone to call for help. "Daniel, please," I whispered. "Please be okay, please." His eyes were closed. His face was so pale. I pressed my hand against where he was bleeding, trying to remember what I'd learned in health class about helping someone who was hurt. But my mind was blank. All I could think was that he had to be okay. He had to be. The ambulance came. The paramedics moved quickly, asking me questions I could barely answer. "What happened? How long has he been unconscious? Is he allergic to anything?" I didn't know. I realized I didn't know so many things about him. We'd spent months together, but he'd never talked much about himself, and now I was terrified I'd never get the chance to ask. They put him on a stretcher and lifted him into the ambulance. I climbed in beside him. I held his hand the whole way to the hospital. His hand was still warm, but it didn't squeeze back. That scared me more than anything. At the hospital, they took him away. A nurse told me to wait. I sat in a hard plastic chair in a bright hallway that smelled like cleaning supplies and fear. I called his phone, hoping to find a number for his family and his contacts, but his phone was locked and I didn't know the password. I'd never felt so helpless in my entire life. Hours passed. I didn't move from that chair. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think about anything except Daniel lying in that hospital bed somewhere. Nurses walked by. Doctors talked in low voices. Machines beeped. None of it felt real. Finally, a doctor came out. She told me Daniel had a concussion and some bruising, but he was going to be okay. The relief hit me so hard I started crying right there in the hallway. The doctor put her hand on my shoulder and told me I could see him soon. When they let me into his room, he was lying in a hospital bed with bandages around his head. His eyes were still closed. Machines beeped softly beside him. I pulled a chair close to his bed and took his hand in both of mine. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm right here, Daniel." I don't know if he could hear me, but I kept talking anyway. I told him everything I'd been too scared to say before. I told him how much he meant to me. How every Tuesday and Thursday I counted down the hours until I could see him. How his quiet presence made me feel more understood than anyone's words ever had. How I loved the way he listened, the way he noticed things, the way he cared without making a big show of it. "You didn't have to do that," I said, my voice breaking. "You didn't have to protect me. That person could have really hurt you. What if something worse had happened? What if I'd lost you?" Tears ran down my face. I wiped them away with my sleeve, but more kept coming. "I need you to wake up," I continued. "I need you to be okay, because I don't know how to do this without you anymore. You became part of my life without me even realizing it, and now I can't imagine my days without you in them." I stayed there all night. Nurses came in to check on him. They told me I should go home and rest, but I couldn't leave. What if he woke up and I wasn't there? What if he needed me? Just before sunrise, I felt his hand move in mine. My eyes shot open. I'd been dozing in the chair, my head resting on the edge of his bed. His fingers squeezed mine gently. I looked up at his face. His eyes were open. They found mine immediately. "Hey," he whispered. His voice was rough and weak, but it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. "Hey," I whispered back, crying and smiling at the same time. He tried to sit up, but I gently pushed him back down. "Don't move, you're hurt, you have to rest. Are you okay?" he asked. Those were his first words, not about himself, not about the pain he must have been feeling. He wanted to know if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said. "You saved me. You always save me." He lifted his hand slowly and touched my face, just like he'd done in the park. "I'd do it again," he said softly, "every time." And in that moment, looking into his tired eyes, I understood that love wasn't just butterflies and sweet moments. It was someone willing to stand between you and danger, even if it cost them everything. Daniel came home from the hospital after 5 days. I visited him every single day he was there. We talked more during those 5 days than we had in all the months before. He told me about his childhood, his family, his dreams. I told him mine. It felt like we were finally letting each other all the way in. I thought everything would be perfect once he got better. I thought we'd go back to our coffee shop, our walks, our quiet moments together. I thought what happened would bring us closer. I was wrong. The first sign was small. I texted him the day after he got home, asking if he needed anything. He replied with just 2 words, "I'm fine." No emoji. No warmth, just those 2 cold words. I told myself he was tired. He needed rest. I'd give him space, but the space kept growing. When I called, he didn't answer. When I texted, his replies got shorter and shorter. "Okay, maybe later. I can't." I asked if I could visit. He said he wasn't feeling well. I offered to bring him soup. He said his mom was taking care of him. 2 weeks passed, then 3. I barely heard from him. My heart started to ache in a way I'd never felt before. It was worse than when I'd seen him lying on that sidewalk. At least then, I knew what was wrong. Now I had no idea. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the coffee shop on Thursday at 4 o'clock, our usual time. I sat at our table and waited. He didn't come. I waited for 2 hours. The barista kept looking at me with sad eyes, like she knew I'd been left behind. I went back the next Thursday, and the next. He never showed up. One evening, I was walking home from work when I saw him. He was across the street, coming out of a bookstore. My heart jumped. I started to wave, started to call his name. But then I stopped, because I saw his face. The moment he noticed me, his whole expression changed. He looked afraid. No, he looked guilty. He turned and walked the other way, fast, like he couldn't get away from me quickly enough. I stood there on the sidewalk, frozen. People walked past me, but I couldn't move. The person who had held my hand, the person who had protected me, the person who had said he'd do it all again, that same person had just run away from me. I went home and cried until I had no tears left. Days turned into weeks. I stopped going to the coffee shop. It hurt too much to sit at that table alone. I stopped walking through the park where we'd had our first real conversation. I tried to stop thinking about him, but everything reminded me of Daniel, the smell of coffee, the sound of rain, the color of the autumn leaves. I didn't understand. What had I done wrong? Why had he left? The questions kept me awake at night. I looked back at every conversation we'd had in the hospital. Had I said something that scared him? Had I been too much, not enough? My friends told me to forget about him. They said if he really cared, he wouldn't have disappeared. They said I deserved better, but they didn't understand. You can't just forget someone who knew you without words. You can't just move on from someone who felt like home. 1 month after I last saw him, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was his jacket, the one he'd given me so many times when I was cold, the one that still smelled like him. There was also a note. My hands shook as I opened it. The note said, "I'm sorry, you deserve someone whole, someone who can protect you without ending up broken. I can't be that person anymore. Please forget me. Please be happy." I read it 10 times. 20 times, each time, my heart broke a little more. He thought he wasn't enough. He thought I cared about him because he was strong or because he could protect me. He didn't understand that I'd fallen in love with him on those quiet afternoons when we just sat together. When he listened to me, when he smiled his small smile, when he existed beside me and made the world feel softer. I grabbed my phone. I called him. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I sent him a text. "You're wrong. You're so wrong. Please talk to me." He didn't reply. I put on his jacket, even though it was too big. I sat on my bed, wrapped in something that used to be his, and let myself feel everything. The love, the loss, the confusion, the anger, but mostly the sadness. The deep, heavy sadness of losing someone who was still alive, someone who had chosen to walk away. The worst part wasn't that he left. The worst part was that he left because he thought it was better for me. He made that choice alone. He decided what I needed, what I deserved, without asking me, without letting me tell him that I didn't need him to be perfect or strong or whole. I just needed him to be there. But he was gone, and I was alone, holding on to a jacket and a memory of someone who didn't believe he was worth loving anymore. Sometimes the deepest pain comes not from someone who stops loving you, but from someone who loves you so much they walk away because they think you deserve better than what they can give. 4 months passed. Winter came and covered everything in snow. I tried to move on. I really did. I went to work. I smiled when I was supposed to. I even went on a date that my friend set up. But halfway through dinner, the guy made a joke, and I thought about how Daniel would have smiled at it. That small, quiet smile of his. I went home early. I still had his jacket. I knew I should give it back or throw it away. But I couldn't. Some nights, when I missed him so much it hurt to breathe, I'd put it on and pretend he was still there. Then, on a cold Saturday in February, I saw him again. I was at the grocery store, reaching for a box of tea on the top shelf. I couldn't quite get it. I stood on my toes, stretching as far as I could. Suddenly, a hand reached past me and grabbed the box. I knew that hand. I'd held it so many times. I turned around. Daniel stood there, holding the tea. He looked different, thinner, tired. His hair was longer, but his eyes were the same, and the moment they met mine, I saw everything, the pain, the longing, the love he tried so hard to bury. "Here," he said quietly, handing me the tea. His hand shook. "Thank you," I whispered. We stood there in the middle of the tea aisle, just looking at each other. People pushed their carts past us. Someone said, "Excuse me," because we were blocking the way. But neither of us moved. "How are you?" he asked. His voice cracked a little. "I've been okay." I lied. "How are you?" He stopped. He looked down. "I'm managing." Another lie. I could see it all over his face. "Daniel," I started, but he stepped back. "I should go," he said quickly. "It was good to see you." He turned to walk away, and something inside me broke open. I'd spent 4 months respecting his choice. 4 months letting him stay away. 4 months pretending I was fine. But I wasn't fine, and looking at him now, I could see he wasn't either. "Wait," I said. My voice came out stronger than I expected. Just wait. He stopped but didn't turn around. Why did you leave? I asked, the real reason. Don't tell me it was for my own good. Don't tell me I deserve better. Tell me the truth. His shoulders tensed. For a long moment he didn't say anything. Then slowly he turned around. His eyes were red. I was scared, he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear him. When I woke up in that hospital, all I could think about was what could have happened. What if he'd had a weapon? What if I hadn't been able to protect you? What if next time I'm not enough? Next time, I said. Daniel, you saved me. You got hurt because of me. Exactly, he said, his voice rising a little. I got hurt. I was useless. You had to sit there in that hospital, scared and alone, because I wasn't strong enough, and I thought, his voice broke, I thought you'd be safer without me, that you'd be better off with someone who could actually protect you. My eyes filled with tears. You really believe that? You think I cared about you because you were strong? He looked away. I don't know. I just know I couldn't stand the thought of failing you again. I walked closer to him. I could see the way his hands were shaking, the way he was trying so hard not to look at me, the way he was fighting himself. Daniel, look at me, I said softly. He finally met my eyes. I never needed you to be strong. I said, I never needed you to protect me from everything bad in the world. I just needed you to be there. That's all. Just be there. But what if I can't? He started. What if you can't what? Be perfect? Save me every time, never get hurt? I shook my head. Nobody can promise that. Life doesn't work that way. Bad things happen. People get hurt. But that's not a reason to run away from the people who love you. His eyes widened. Love, yes, love, I said, and my voice shook now too. I love you. I've loved you since those quiet afternoons in the coffee shop. I loved you when you gave me your umbrella in the rain. I loved you when you held my hand in the park, and I loved you every single day you were gone, even though it hurt so much I thought I'd break. Tears ran down his face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you thought wrong, I said gently. You don't get to decide what's best for me. You don't get to make that choice alone. If you're scared, tell me. If you're hurt, let me help. But don't walk away and expect me to thank you for it. He covered his face with his hands. His whole body shook. I stepped closer and pulled his hands away. I held them tight. I don't need you to be perfect, Daniel, I said. I just need you to be brave enough to stay. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he pulled me into his arms and held me so tight I could barely breathe. I didn't care. I wrapped my arms around him and held on just as tight. I missed you, he whispered into my hair. Every single day. I missed you so much. Then don't leave again, I said. Promise me, whatever happens, whatever you're afraid of, we face it together. He pulled back just enough to look at my face. Then he leaned his forehead against mine, just like he'd done that evening in the park. Together, he whispered, I promise. And I knew, standing there in the grocery store with tears on both our faces, that love wasn't about being fearless. It was about being afraid and choosing each other anyway. Thank you so much for watching. His body said more. I hope this story touched your heart the way it touched mine. Sometimes love isn't about perfect words or grand gestures. Sometimes it's about showing up, staying close, and choosing each other even when things get hard. If this story made you feel something, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories that will help you learn English while touching your heart. Remember, real love isn't fearless. It's being afraid and choosing each other anyway. What did you think of Daniel and this story? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for being here. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep hoping, and keep your heart open. See you in the next story.